we see a lot of people who don't believe anyone could be impartial.
Right.
Yeah, they ascribe motivation to someone.
Yeah.
People are always ascribing motivation to me or the BBC, when actually our motivation is journalistic.
Tim Davie, welcome to the Cheltenham Literature Festival.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Have you just arrived this afternoon?
I've been here a couple of hours, enjoying the rain and the vibe. So yeah, all is fine.
How's it been?
Motivating, actually. I think this is one of the nice things to do in life, isn't it? Reflect on the great writing that comes out of this country and beyond. It's just a very nice thing to do, isn't it, to be here in Cheltenham talking about books.
There's a lot of young people here. It's the Sunday, lots of kids, lots of families. It sort of feels like there's a real kind of energy around new readers.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of your time, I imagine, Tim, thinking about new content consumers and new consumers of the BBC and how you sort of appeal to those people and get them to watch the BBC.
Absolutely, and it's a huge topic, isn't it? Because if you've been brought up on reading like me and you're addicted, you kind of think, how do I get other people into it? I mean, we do things like the BBC, the 500 words competition, where you just get people starting writing, reading their own stories. So we've got to find, and I think there's so many people working on this, but ways into reading. I would say the challenge for the BBC, for anyone, probably for the Times, is actually we do have a lot of evidence that attention spans, this is no great surprise, are getting much shorter. As a father and a parent, you see people, vegging out on very quick content. So, and I find even personally that adjustment to get into reading and stimulated is quite a big leap once you've been absorbing other content. So I think what we've got to do is both. You've got to offer people things that work with their grammar, but then bring them across a bridge into reading, because once you're there, you never go back, in my view.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you're gonna talk today your session about sort of trust and about
absolutely, yeah.
Trust in the big institutions of power. The BBC is one of them. Again, I guess you spend a lot of time thinking about how you maintain trust with people. Of
course, I think it's everything. And I think if you look around the world, you see institutional trust is under pressure. People are questioning whether institutions are serving them.
Why is that? Why is that, do you think?
I think it's because we come from an age now where people expect to participate, to interact, to have more, power themselves. So just being talked at or not listened to. The best description I've heard is that people trust things when they know they're acting in their interests. It's a very simple thing. Is someone acting in your interest or not? I think in the UK we should celebrate a bit, because we're pretty hard on ourselves. I often say we've got a kind of PhD in self-flagellation, because we have a great functioning free press. Most of the world doesn't have that. I'm a huge champion of the Times being able to do its journalism alongside the BBC. So that's really important. But how do we protect that? How do we make sure people's voices are heard? And if people don't feel the institutions are working in their interest, I think you do see diminishment of trust. And I worry about that, because I think overall, I think most people are pretty decent. They want these institutions to work. I would say we're in a time where we need to fight for them. There's jeopardy here. And yes, it's an important time.
Do you think it's existential for the BBC?
For the BBC, I don't think any institutions should sit there and say we have a inalienable right to exist. I actually think everyone should say, day in, day out, I've got to serve every household. In Cheltenham, in Penrith, in Penzance, in Belfast. In my job, I am not there to talk down to people in any way, shape or form, and that's important. So I think it's right for every institution to say, look, I don't have to exist. The BBC's in some ways, it's a strange beast. I think it's never been more needed. It's never been more important. But it has to earn it day in, day out by serving audiences and offering them value.
Yeah. Do you think that the sort of old adage, which is that if the BBC is getting attacked from the left and from the right, it's doing the right thing, holds?
Well, I certainly get plenty of feedback in my job, and it's lively on every side, and we see a more weaponised, polarised world. I think it's a bit more complicated than that. I think it's definitely relevant if we're getting noise from both sides, and that is often the case. It is at the moment in a number of issues I can think of where you're getting plenty of people on either side saying you're leaning one way or the other. I think it is, however, a bit more complicated in that the challenge for the BBC is to maintain its editorial guidelines and impartiality and accuracy. And actually, it's not just to make sure we get an equal number of complaints or appreciations on either side. It's about holding a standard. And, look, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And often in this world, people say, "Oh, look, that mistake shows you're this or that." It doesn't often. It's if you like an honest mistake. You put these things right. You keep navigating the course. It's harder. I'm sure Times journalists feel the same thing, or working in radio. You've got all kinds of people ascribing an agenda. You've just got to hold your standard.
And just finally on that point, there's been a lot of sort of talk about the types of people who make news, who are the journalists, who are the producers, what they think and believe and where they come from and their backgrounds and who they talk to and who they represent and all that sort of stuff, and whether there needs to be a sort of corrective in those institutions that perhaps, a lot of people talk about, reform as an example of that actually there are people out there who are subscribing to that kind of politics, who are feeling like the people who make their news don't understand them and aren't talking about the things that they talk about. Is that a fair criticism?
I think it's essential that we recruit people from all different backgrounds, diverse views. I think people's experiences are valid. So if you had experience of a particular country or an area, that's important. But I would say with the BBC, what we're finding is, particularly people coming through who are wholly being brought up on social media, we have to really work hard to say, okay, now you are standing as a journalist, that what you're working on is a journalistic standard, but you also need to listen and serve people, and any whiff of, if you like, metropolitan bias or anything like that, I think is really damaging for any media institution. And if you look across the industry, the BBC is actually doing well because it's got obviously its local offices. I'm pushing money out of London so that you're never distant from those people you serve. It's essential. I agree with you. It's a real number one priority internally in the BBC to make sure we're connected to everyone, and there's no assumed position. We're listening, we're open-minded, and we give everyone a voice, and also we interrogate everyone, and we hold everyone to account. That's what a public service broadcaster should be doing.
And how do you speak to the people who are sort of so used to seeing things that are just partisan now, right? Like, if that you can create a story and you can frame it in a way that you think is balanced, but somebody will always be able to find a fault in it, because to them balance is something else. If the very essence of what truth is and what balance looks like and what impartiality looks like is up for debate, then how does the BBC navigate through that?
It's a fascinating subject, because in some research we're seeing, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in my session, is we see a lot of people who don't believe anyone could be impartial. Right. They ascribe motivation to someone. Yeah. People always ascribing motivation to me or the BBC, when actually our motivation is journalistic. The answer to your question is, firstly, you have to be good and deliver on what you say you're going to deliver, which is the number one thing. But secondly, I think there is opportunity, and you see us doing it, explaining journalistic process. So a bit more open, or a lot more open, with the people paying for you, the members of the public, saying this is how we put the report together. You'll see it more on the BBC, our journalists talking about what they're doing. I'm sure you're thinking about in the Times, opening up the process, showing how it all works.
Just finally, you are the head of one of the most important institutions in the world, one of the perhaps most testing times in its rich and long history. Everybody lays all of the problems for scandals, things they're annoyed with, things they love and hate, programmes they love and hate, at your door. How do you sleep at night?
I sleep pretty well. I think I try and put things in perspective, and really, really look at making sure we're happy with what we're doing and where the truth is. The second is, all of us and people listening to this, there are really important things in life in terms of family, the things that outlast all of us, and just set things in perspective, be calm and do the right thing. I wouldn't say it's a job for the faint-hearted, I wouldn't recommend it, but actually I'm prouder than ever that I've been to the BBC. And also, once you've started working for something you care about, you really don't want to go to anything else. So I really feel the BBC is needed. I feel journalism and good journalism is needed. I think what we've got in the UK is very precious. So I'm a big cheerleader for all of it, including Times Radio. So that's what we should be doing.
Okay, what's your favourite programme right now, or your favourite book to read?
That's a good question.
Your Cheltenham cultural recommendation.
I'm doing a bit of Celebrity Traitors.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
Blue Lights for Drama, by the way, is doing great. I just read Impartial's The Rules of Civility, which is quite a way back, which is I was a good read, and he's written a few good books. I'm also a sucker for the classics, so I've just read a book by Henry Green called Loving, which is about the relationships in a country home during the war. So that's really my period. So I'm always delving around the Evelyn Wars and the Ivy Compton Burnett. Now there's a recommendation that you can look up, but is a very undervalued novelist in the British suite. So there you go. There's a few recommendations.
Brilliant. Tim Davie, thank you
Thanks
so
a
much.
lot. Thanks.